plugged in a computer to HDMI, and there's nothing on the computer, so we're gonna turn it on. I know that when we turn computers on, they often boot the internal hard drive. There are other options if you hold down the right alternate button.
And you want to put it on your USB
I'm
drive.
now, you can see on the screen, I don't know if we're, is this what we're gonna do, or?
Yes.
Okay, that's what we're gonna do, so I'm gonna put it over here. You can see that in the boot menu, there is an option for booting from a flash drive.
But we're not seeing your screen.
Because at the very, very beginning, we're
Okay.
not gonna see anything, because this is the BIOS, the computer has
Yeah.
no software at all.
Perfect.
But what we wanna do is use the technologies available today for us to define containers that can boot hardware or boot in the cloud. So I'm gonna go ahead and choose my flash drive. And
It's
we'll give it a
coming.
moment, it will come up and it will HDMI out. One of the things that I've been working on for many years, making it where the ideas and concepts we come up with together are easily available to demonstrate. And in demonstrating, it used to have a thing called the demo scene. It's around today, but back in the day, it was how do you make this particular piece of hardware do some really amazing things? And there we go. So I'm gonna turn this toward me so that I can type.
Yes.
But that was,
And I think the screen is shown up. Get the cable.
no, it's good. It
That's
just,
good.
I've seen that it's initializing,
Oh, okay.
all of the parts of Fedora's way of doing things.
Yes.
So we're
Alright,
here.
coming.
Let me see what type of login we get here. Again, this is, we get a minute to log in, so we're nearly there.
Yeah, okay.
And this will probably be the moment where it just, isn't gonna log in and. Give me a moment. I tried this just before I got here. That is not the right login.
Why?
So we had a moment where we pulled the drive without, hold on, is that? Okay, there was a moment where we pulled the drive without.
From there?
No, when we turned it off.
I like you saying, wait, it was me, I believe it.
So this is not gonna go quite as I have expected.
Plan B PowerPoint?
Plan B, it's all online, but I do need, because I brought this machine, and the USB stick here, so I'm gonna turn it off. The kids that we did this classroom environment with, there was a classroom of 24 machines, and the environment that we booted for the entire classroom used these USB sticks.
Mhm.
And I'm hoping that there's an OS on this machine when I pull this off, and I remember it after the password to do that. It did boot once after that, so.
Yeah.
So this is also Fedora. If you, one of the things that we've been able to do is take these things. I've done some work with an organization called the Linux Foundation, and one of their sub-organizations is Cloud Native Compute Foundation. And this, hey, the mouse works, the display works. Let's do a little bit of making it shoot out the right place.
Okay.
For the displays, let's just mirror them. So what I see is what you see. All right, I'm gonna keep the changes. It's quite big. Maybe it's because my scale is set for my old man eyes on a normal machine. There we go. So now let's keep these changes. So one of the things, let's, I'm gonna jump in the Wi-Fi real quick since we've
Yes.
I'm not even, so Wi-Fi, turn it on. Which,
You see guest.
yeah, that was wireless.
I wanna do guest.
Well, if he's got a wireless.
Sorry, USB.
UCB guest.
UCB guest.
Thank you. Oh, it moved. This is
Yeah.
us, yeah?
Then you agree not doing
I do
anything,
agree.
yeah.
No, I'm not gonna do anything.
No,
Wait,
you're fine.
it's done?
Yeah.
So let's
No, I'm connected.
turn it off, turn it off. Not now. Let's start this over, right? So one of the things that we had running that I'm gonna try to log into is cloudnative.coop.
Okay.
This is infrastructure that takes containers and makes them available for communities. The last place I was in was working with the Cloud Native Creek Foundation to help their many projects onboard stuff. You can do this too if you have a laptop. There's nothing special about this machine. I didn't even know what operating system was when I turned it on. You can sign up or you can just log in with username and password. I'm just gonna click on, actually, I'm probably gonna use login with username and password because, all right, give me a moment to log in and get it.
Okay, fine.
Again, the other machine is logged in, so HH is my, I have no idea what my password is. I'm gonna log in with the username. I know there's another user out there called AK admin,
Sure.
K admin, and then it's gonna ask me for the password, and I'm gonna go look up password. Again, apologies. The co-op password is not terribly long, but it's long enough. And make sure it's typing in the language that I can type in. That's not the right one.
I wonder if that's by the stick didn't log in. Language.
No, because I was able to type the wrong password. All right, I'm gonna stay signed in. So this particular is my backdoor user to just make sure that if stuff doesn't work, we can get in. What you do when you go to Cloud Native Co-op and you log in, you can create your own iPod. An iPod is something you listen to music on, but iPod is in cloud stuff. When you create a container in Santa, it's called an iPod. So I'm gonna have one previously I created that's available in all workspaces. And I called it Atlas because this was the location I was speaking in. So inside of Hippie's Atlas space that I've created, I have some software, but I'm going to bypass a lot of that because we're going in a little slightly different direction. I'm just going to bring up, not the terminal, the web. And so this is our presentation. It is at that URL up top. And I had Slack installed, so I was going to drop it into the Slack. But this is some slides that hopefully we can focus on the majority of our time on. Let's see if I can click. I can. So this is a story about rebooting education. My son is TT. I am HH, Hippie Hacker, and Tiki Taka, son of Hippie Hacker in New Zealand. And he's an eye. And I'm not. And when me and my son, or you and your friend, or you and a peer in another organization spend time together, that's cooperation. And I want to encourage us to spend more of our time learning to make cooperation viral. Because single player mode doesn't get you very far. It also means you have to spend a lot of time in isolation figuring out the culture and the words and the thing versus we spent a year traveling in a Volkswagen. Sorry, I spent with my family, we got a little bigger vehicle, it's an RV. But we went to all the spaces, hacker spaces, maker spaces, community spaces. And the ones that had been around for many years, there was someone that greets you. I say, I'm so glad that you are here. And my son and I, Tiki Taka and Hippie Haka, went from Boulder to Paris to fight some battles together. And we had a detour. I brought lots of technology and USB sticks, and sometimes things don't go to plan. And when we got out of the metro station, I noticed my alarm went off and my bag was moving. And it went on this beautiful journey of Paris that I would encourage you to take a look at. It's all over the place, but there's my rolling bag at various locations. The cops got involved. There was a detective. And in the end, there was a homeless guy standing over my bag. But they only took what was very important to them, and that would be battery packs, power cables, and all 75 USB sticks. Ouch. So the reason we went there was to boot these USB sticks. Can I make this fuller screen? Clicky? That's not it. Does anybody know how to
Top rate, you got it.
top that? Yeah, it's actually, there's a little bit missing at the bottom. It's all right. So it's fine. So we learned together. We got to learn some things from really amazing people there. TT got his first iPod. and it's not what you think it is. But we got to, also, the group of humans in New Zealand, the II team. We have a culture of cooperation, and we want to try to make that viral. So everything we do is very intentional around being an example for others to go, ooh, can I do that too? But not in the context of a particular nation or neighborhood or app store or company, but always beyond us, whoever the us is. So the first part of our story takes us to cloud native. And I'm going to stop for a minute because when you use new topics, you're like, what is that? Does anybody have any ideas on what cloud native is? We know what kids are, I hope. But we'd love to hear some thoughts on what cloud native means to the people in this room. Oh, sorry.
It kind of feels like an oxymoron because things in the way internet is set up right now, things that are cloud are not necessarily native and they're like supposed to be different. Things that run natively on your computer versus things that run on the cloud.
Absolutely.
So it's a weird term in that sense. And
It
I'm
is a
assuming you'll talk
weird
about
term. I
why it's
absolutely
put
agree with
together that way.
It is a weird term.
Kids that live in the cloud,
Well, the kids are people, this is, so to give some context, there is several events yearly where we go to different, North America, and Europe and China, and we're trying to add where the Cloud Native Compute Foundation, which so Kubernetes, when it came out of Google, Dan Kahn and some others wanted to figure out how do we make this grow well where we can depend on the infrastructure. Because we have the ITF and these other organizations that do it on an American standards organizations, right? And sometimes when you're trying to do things on multiple places, finding this is definitely more, what is it called when you have a city and they've got the business people get together and they try to decide things?
Chamber of Commerce.
Chamber of Commerce. This is like a chamber of commerce for the cloud. So it's a different structure than these other organizations, and they want to introduce kids to be able to work and do things in the cloud. And so they have this kids day where they have lots of different learning to do Minecraft, Sonic Pi, hacking on Minecraft, like the source code and stuff, Raspberry Pi stuff, and we just did an AI one this last thing. But my focus was just we have a lot of people who spend a lot of time configuring all the laptops to be able to service 100 and some odd kids. And I was like, maybe we can reboot the way we do education. So you can just go to a website, click, you download the image and set the entire classroom up. Because the way we need to empower people to teach together and do it cooperatively. So when we're talking about cloud native, I think the cloud's fantastic. I want to bring it down to earth and put it in people's hands and devices that are in their neighborhood and in their nation. Any other questions about cloud native? Yes.
Do any of the kids know or care about cloud native?
In this context, when you're going to these different nations, one, you have to speak the language. And so we've had a lot of stuff translating. So some of this we'll talk about translating into French. The kids at this point, they're interested in the games and how to, what we're trying to curate is a furnace for their light to go off. Like let them ignite a light bulb where they're like excited and know that they're powerless. And what I was intending to do, when you didn't do it this time, is when they come, say, here's how you turn it off and turn it on, please take this stick home. This is yours. Because I went to Cambodia, and in Cambodia, it's a French colony. There's some colonialism going on there. There was also the Khmer Rouge. Lots of kids went there, and that there was 80% of the population was kids, like under the age of 20 something. So when we went there, they used French computers, and their language was a text, a translation thing, a font basically on top of French. Didn't make them feel real good. So we turned it off, we turned it on again, USB stick, but we added a little button, make more sticks. So those kids were able to own it, owning open source by having it in their hand. And when they went to another cafe, they turn on, they hit the alternate universe thing and boot that stick. And they were excited to share it with their friends. I said, they called me teacher, not hippie back then. I said, hey teacher, how do we get this? Oh, we're gonna add a button, make more sticks. So the kids would be like, hey, teacher said, go get a stick from the phone store, put it in here, turn it off and turn it on again. And we're gonna make one just for you. I'm gonna change the desktop, I'm gonna make this special. And of course, it's come on, they get to do their language. And they made a website, Humanity to Everyone, HTOE.org, because they felt included. So what I'm trying to do is reboot education where the power is in the hands of the people at the edge. And we're demonstrating that by doing it. at the CNCS Kids Day, because it's always beyond us. It's not just the people in the room or the people funding it or the exchange. So I lost all my USB sticks. So I had to file with the fire department or whatever, the police department. Well, we got a bunch of them in time. And Abby, part of II in New Zealand, was able to help me make it French, because first thing is localization. So we made it French. We also made it work because Sonic Pi and a lot of older technologies use audio drivers that are from another era. And then we have there's the bridging. So I worked with some of the, because we're in the big conference, there's 12,000 of your closest friends. So I just went over to some of the guys at Red Hat, Pillars. It was a community effort, but we made it work, and we flashed mini sticks. Come by the place and I'll show you how we duplicate the sticks, because you can't eat just one. I need to think about it. Sometimes the think book helps. In this case, this was the actual hardware that we needed to turn off and turn on again. Because we turned it on and we held the right buttons, we were able to boot, and notice the logo at the bottom, combining the hardware that they had in the neighborhood with the cloud on a stick. Right? This is what I mean about bringing the cloud. So cloud native computing doesn't necessarily mean someone else's computer. It could be, well, someone else's computer, but your stick. So we have now prepared the cloud for the kids. This is the actual classroom environment we showed up on the day. We turned it off, we turned it on. That's me putting the USB stick in. And when we hold down the key, it says, oh, look, there's the Samsung flash drive. We booted it as a classroom with all the software we need to teach them about making music together with their older human. Now we have Kids Day. It's our first kid walks into the classroom. It's starting to work with music. It starts to get loud. We had a request that when we make these images, that the teacher at the front, the instructor, can mute the screens and the audio for everybody in the room. Because if you have 28 kids kind of making loud music right out the speaker, it gets a little intense. And we're trying to go to the next slide. It's not as always work so well. So this is the instructor gave me some feedback. We also learned that the audio problems weren't limited to Linux. On a Mac, connect the HDMI cable, we couldn't get the sound on the Mac to come out. But we didn't have Apple there to help us. We didn't have a community to help us change the entire wiring like we did on the sticks for the kids. Open source is powerful. So here's our kids going through. You can notice that the app that they're running is the Sonic Pi. It's on top of the USB laptops that we booted. And it was amazing to hear the cacophony of excitement and light bulbs going off with these kids. Any questions so far? Awesome. Cooperations are not something, I guess that's where I need to stop and ask, what is a cooperation?
Everybody puts in their piece and shares it. Everybody offers an accommodation.
Accommodation. Walk me through that. What does that mean?
It means that when you're cooperating with people, the people in the room need to be able to be accommodating of all kinds of different levels of capability.
Yes.
And that's what cooperation can be built.
Working together. Working together,
Absolutely.
playing together.
Yes. I like being together. And for me, I used to think about renaming all of this to just be co-op. And like there's a command you can run. And I thought about calling co-op. So you could do co-op template. And so what does it look like then? What does a co-op create? Well, it creates a space to be in with your friends or with someone from another institute or another department or another industry. And in that cooperative template, it has all of the technology necessary to either boot a USB stick, or if you go to cloudnative.coop, you can choose the cloud image. It's an OCI image, and it makes a desktop environment. And so I was trying to show that earlier, but the stick isn't shifting today. I want us to be able to think about our cooperations as lasting as little as minutes, hours, weeks, or lifetimes. Corporations have a very distinct flavor to them around the embodiment of something. And when I talk about cooperations and It's literally the stuff between the eyes. It's the liminal. And so the space you create for real humans to inhabit together, to do some innovation. If we could find a way to make something beautiful that connects the Department of Agriculture, and that's not just a university, to connect the Ministry of Lens, so it's the Ministry of New Zealand. Lens, which they've got these different places where we do how we manage land and how we manage our government and how we manage. There was a treaty signed there. We're supposed to actually consult with the indigenous people there, and they know the land. They also it's part of our Declaration of Independence. It's in the U.S. What's the Treaty of Waitangi in New Zealand? I'm trying to this Constitution. The Constitution. There you go. The U.S. Constitution that found the definition of how you're supposed to do things. We have a document that says consult the locals. And what if we made it where locals could spin up an environment with GIS data and AI and the maps and the things so that they could invite people from all over the world to help show a graph or a map that is irrefutable because it's been seen by lots of eyes. So when we have a multi-eye space with the right people in the room, that's headline worthy stuff for a nation. To say, we got the person, the best in the world at this, and we got the person who was supposed to be consulted, and here's where we're, and if you disagree, fantastic. Click and show me. Using the same data, the same space with different viewpoints. I like to call them perspectives. Because everybody's got a pair. But maybe just for a moment, step into their eyes and put them on and go, oh, that's very fascinating. Did you know? Check these out. Right. So that's why I'm super passionate about cooperation, not necessarily the worker-owned cooperative. That's a great thing, and I support that. But I want to think beyond us in that context. The shared spaces I talk about, each of these little USB sticks, when you turn it on, you can run a command in the black inky area. Actually, I'll do a side thing for a moment. We have all of our tooling, github.com/Métis. So if you run Métis, there's actually a picture down here to kind of help us along here. The inky blackness of the terminal is kind of scary. People haven't experienced that, but I grew up on it. And when you run Métis, it literally shows you a URL to share with your friends and invite them into that inky blackness together. And some of our technologies are so complex that when you turn them on, the first time they drop you in this inky black terminal. Well, what if, and I've done this for the Nix community, if you turn on their bootable ISO to do the installer, if you do the II version, it gives a URL. What if when they did that, the community got a notification saying, please, somebody's here, let's give them a tour. You could get more people in your project or your community. So you can see that these are two windows. There's a third one down here to show it's multi-user. This is anything that has a terminal, Microsoft Windows, whatever. So we'll go back to reboot. That's a shared space. We also do it where the desktop environment can be a shared space. So all these sticks, there's a URL you share, and the kids can get help. The instructor can pull it up in front of the screen. So sorry, this doesn't go quite the plan. I'm kind of shifting a bit. When I talk about getting on the same page, it doesn't take a lot because you just send them a link. And everybody is on that student's laptop, everybody, and it's not the laptop, like it could be the cloud. They're all on the same page together, working together. And I won't do it here, but the idea was at the end of the presentation to ask, what is your story? What are you thinking about? What would be easier to do if you had more people doing it with you? What if your community's onboarding process actually said, just click here to create a space and all the software and everything they need, the people to onboard to that community said, we're so glad you're here, here's the process. And you change the process by people who still remember how hard it was, not by old people like me, because I don't remember how hard it was back then. So as far as like a demo, you can go here and create a space. And then you can invite me to it. And I'll help you tell your story. Because I think if we can make cooperation viral, we won't need so many corporations. And I hope that we can reboot education to make it native to, anyway, that's 25 minutes, not so bad.
The pie in the.
Oh, yeah, so I have some things. May help to simulate some profession. If you were to go to any of these URLs, you could type and you could use your mouse. But often we're trying to go in spaces where there is nobody that knows a lot about technology. And so there's some software out there called KVM, and it takes a Raspberry Pi and it uses the USB port. Here, pass it around. And when you turn on this normal Raspberry Pi, it uses the USB port because there's some software inside the Linux kernel that lets some devices like phones and Raspberry Pis show up as a keyboard and a mouse and a disk and a network and everything else. And we can do something like this where we install it somewhere and people can bring in their computers to a community center. I say, I need some support. I don't know how to do this. Well, we don't have anybody here that knows it either. But when they plug it in, just like you're typing on here, there's a web page they go to, and you can see that person's like probably a camera. Here's my phone. Here's my iPad. I need some help. Could you be my eye in the sky and help me format the thing and start over? Right? You have to turn it off and turn it on again via this universal connector that has so many standards, but we're limited if only corporations decide how our universe connects to each other. And if we go a step further beyond creating these, you have iPhones. So this is, I'll pass this around, but this is an Android phone. But one of the things around some of our phones is that when you turn it off and you hold on the keys in the right way, you can flash it. And we can do it from a website. So if you get to the point of having a website in your community that has your own app store, that has your own school system, that has your own everything, you can reboot not just education, but a community. And so II is about instant infrastructure. And it's about turning everything off and turning it on again and letting the people in our nations and our neighborhoods try something completely different that's driven by them. Sorry, this talk is going all over the place, but.
So this just needs 5 volts DC?
Yeah. So when you plug it into something else, you would use a USB cable. And so you would plug it in just like a normal and it would show up to that device as a mouse. And so when you connect over the network, you would move the mouse and it would move on the screen. You would type and it would come over to the computer or the iPad or the phone. Because you can actually connect keyboards and mice to nearly any of it. It's the universal connector. It's called a HID, a human interface device. If we can find ways to take something physically on the ground and let people who aren't there support getting it started. I hosted, who was our friend? You know the Tor project? Are you familiar with Tor? So Tor is some software for browsing the internet, and where places where governments are not in agreement with what the population wants to do, it allows them to reach things. But it's really difficult to set up. And so the project manager for the open source Tor project came out and they saw what we were doing and said, oh my, if we had iPhones out in the field, we could have cell phone connectivity to get started. And we could go into a closet with the machines and turn them off and turn them on again and boot from the iPhone. So it's a lot of information, didn't go to plan as far as booting off the laptop demo.
Well, how about just what we're doing now? Is there any concept of plugging in a device and just talking to it like an Alexa? Or another similar device that's starting to interpret what did you ask for? You want to put a graphic on the screen of something, or you want somebody to connect to that thing that's over there? Is there any, for the user interface, is there any audible or language processing kind of?
Currently, no, but recently, Elon Musk turned on a lot of information to driving, self-driving for a lot of the software in the vehicles. And he's waited to this point because he didn't have enough input to be able to, it was enough input, there wasn't enough compute power. So he didn't have access to enough compute power. And recently they got an access to compute power to feed all the input and data into that to provide the self-driving from what was, how many lines of code? 300,000 lines of code down to 3 pages. And so what you're talking about as far as providing useful bootstrapping from the ground up, if we start showing, like recording and showing basically streaming everything we can for how to get people set up, we can feed that into some AI to be able to help people talk through, I need some help. And it might just be completely on the phone. But for now, we actually need to connect real people to real problems in real nations and real neighborhoods. And we need to do that by lending our eyes to the thing.
And it's been shown in, various corporate demos where you've got your device and you just say, I need a cab, and it comes out in whatever language you happen to be in the country, right? And they hear that in their language, and then you find the cab and you get there and you go. So ride share kind of thing. Same thing with emergency services. I have a problem in my stomach, and it comes out to the local emergency services as what you're actually experiencing. So it seems like even on advice, you can get this. So just wondering how that blends into your co-op, because then you just say, I only know my language, but this other person knows some other language, and we're cooperating without as much interference.
Tell us more about the experience with the Sonic Pi and the kids. How long was the intervention? What happened before? What happened after with the more experienced people in the room? Sort of those kinds of parameters. Who paid?
There was no, so for this, for the Cloud Native Kids Day that we do, it was founded by Arun Gupta, who is the governing board chair of the Cloud Native Kid Foundation. And what he took was the DevOps for Kids, opened like all of that project, but I think he was also involved with. So we need to get this in front of kids. And so he said, hey, CNCF, do you mind sponsoring? So they're the ones that pay for it. And they have someone on the ground who organizes getting the computers put together in the space. And so then we have a lot of volunteers that show up to teach and to actually run the event. So it doesn't cost the kids anything.
How do the volunteers know what to do?
So there's only 4 classes. So somebody volunteers to teach each of those classes, and they have to be familiar with
What are the classes?
So there's a Raspberry Pi workshop, which there's a touch screen involved and a keyboard, physical rollout keyboard. I've got one of the units here in town. And we went through and do some coding. So it's text that can drop into a prompt, which is where I think that we're going toward IME. So each Raspberry Pi would have a URL that the teacher could bring out to help the kids walk through. And it had a couple of sensors. So I was trying to learn to use sensors and show them how to. And then there was another one on hacking Minecraft, which uses Forge and a couple others to let them see the source code and make modules. So they could make it when you shoot an egg, it launches an Ender Dragon. And that was probably the most popular one.
Because Minecraft or
Probably. It's also like hacking, like it's the one where you're taking something else and hacking on it. Sonic Pi was accessible, and so it's something very easily for children to be able to create. And you're trying to make them own it and create it. And then the last one, that was this, when they made a book. I didn't bring the book with me, but it was Hippie and Friends. So they have a marketing thing where there's these animals that they draw for each of the projects. And there's a new robot, a binary robot that does AI to recognize friends. And so the book is about actually using the book to put it at the camera to recognize the different people, except for it was also Minecraft. I got permission from Microsoft to use the green tall thing. What's it called?
Creeper.
There you go, creeper. Thank you very much. To not let the creepers onto the boat. That was this year, but it changes. And this is the first year we've done the USB stick, so I will try to make sure that the USB sticks for Salt Lake City would go for all of the classes. And if we do the Raspberry Pi one, making sure that when it comes up, the teacher has a list of all of the booted devices to click and show the class what's happening on that screen.
CNCF runs 2 main conferences a year, which are Kubernetes based, but they're actually more just open source generally now. One in North America and one in Europe. So the one in Europe, 12,000.
It's 12,000.
The North American one's usually 8 to 10, maybe a little more, 1,000 people. So then it comes in Salt Lake City. But the kids' days are run as a part of that, either at the beginning or the end, as a way of, because everyone's in one place already, the resources are already there, the venues are there, all of that kind of stuff.
Well, it's just that leveraging like Minecraft. I know how to do this. And then, you know, I took one time where I took and dumped some LiDAR data and changed it into blocks, and then kids could go through the neighborhood in North Bowler and say, oh, it's blocky, but it's where I live for the middle school. So they were able to use it immediately.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's
A point cloud for kids.
well, you take the point cloud, you turn it into blocks, and then you've got the school in the neighborhood, and they actually designed the school the way they wanted the school to look versus what it looked like. Right now. So those kind of GIS-y kind of things that you can touch on. Or, you know, just using the GUI that they already know, whatever it is, whether it's Game Boys where they control the periscope of the submarine because they know how to use that and not the interface that was built by the manufacturer. That kind of thing is actually happening in the Navy.
You know, it gives me one quick question, what he was saying. How flexible is the device that you're putting II on?
It's whatever, I didn't get to choose the device. It was the one that they already.
Well, no,
made sure that it worked.
what I'm getting at is no thumb drive, but what if you wanted to make it native on a device, similar to what you've done with the
It's
phone?
DE. It's just a drive, right?
Right.
There's no difference as far as the thing booting, whether it's on the outside or inside. But this allows us to show up with what's on the outside and to try something different where it doesn't harm or change anything. And if they really like it, there'll be a button to make more sticks or format this computer.
That's cool.
And once we get to the iPhone, you'll be able to have the USB, it shows up as the drive. You can customize, well, this is the type of thing we want on this. Let's install this or boot this computer.
Or the game.
Right, well, but this also tends to work with legacy hardware stuff that's, oh, well, we can't, well, the idea is that you can use the hand-me-downs from the hand-me-downs
Well,
and make it work.
If we go with the Raspberry Pi, for instance, and we talk about kids playing games, and then we hook a camera up to it, like I'm talking just a USB camera, right? Focus at the thing, and then you use the USB. You could use AI to actually solve the games completely. Anything that they can see via the camera and send USB PID commands to. So play Quake through, fastest time ever. You could do it with an Pi and the right data set. And the kids would love that. It's like, oh, well, I'm trying to solve this game, and they actually get to learn. They're really motivated to learn really hard.
Yeah, what are some of the cool things that the kids did? Like, so obviously there's a distribution of people who were kind of disengaged and stuff, who like couldn't tear them away from it.
Yeah,
I'm curious to hear the amazing kids did this amazing thing in 2 days. And I mean, what are some of the
Quick, like, I didn't record the audio, it's just a few pictures.
But I mean, whatever,
Yeah,
stories about kids doing amazing things in this context.
Yeah, so the compositions, like, cause I was in the Sonic Pi class, getting to see them go through and create really amazing, I was like, what is that? That's amazing, and it was really amazing.
Yeah.
And that was,
kitty stuff.
and I think within the wider context on that group, the kids in Cambodia being able to make their own sticks and then making the websites and then that being this similar environment we didn't let the kids take them home this time because this is the first time, but next time they'll take them home. And what I want to see is what the kids do when they're not sitting there in the classroom and when they turn it on and connect it to the device there. Because what we might do is make sure that you can boot it, but there's maybe enough that there's a VM. So if you're on a Windows or a Mac, you can double click and it is the whole exactly what they did in the class. And the button to ask for help so that they can, send it, so they can have their uncle or their auntie or people help them. The Minecraft stuff was kind of fun to see the ideas because the kids come up with some of the ideas for the hacks. And I think one was the dragon like spawning endless ender dragons. So there's just, a bunch of zombies and a bunch of dragons. So Sonic Pi, I think that's the ones from that particular event, but it's just one instantiation.
Yeah, like in the slide you showed, there may be 30 people in a cohort.
I think this particular one, there was limited to 18 in each room, maybe at least for the one I was in. So it's probably 20, 25, 24. So it's around 100 kids, but 4 different rooms. And they do it 2 hours, it's an hour, it's probably like an hour and a half and then a break and an hour and a half.
Wow, short.
So it's a morning. It's definitely just like, I think it is one way to do it. And it is the model that I've been able to experience so far. I definitely want to look at other opportunities and places where where the cooperation between the kids and getting other people into the room and getting able to reboot education. I only had that context so far.
And it's, I mean, it's also the way that all this works, it's an invitation as well, like you might hear, there's interest and it can actually help, you know, the II's only got involved in the last, probably just over a year, so, Arun, who's, the chair of governing board for CNCF, but he's also, heads up the open source office for Intel. His son runs a lot of it, and
That was his picture up there.
yeah, and so there's heaps of room for it to get in.
I would love to do some fun things here and bring some ideas so that we go to Salt Lake and we bring something that's as an example, because it's just a demo, right? I don't think the impact is through the kids in that room. I think it's through the first incubation box of seeing what happens after the room.
Well, that's a question, and do you track that? How do you pay attention to what happens after the main event?
Well, if for the USB sticks, when you first turn them on, they get assigned a name.
Yeah,
So that's what
you can see them if they
turn it on again,
yeah.
they'll say, somebody from the classroom is here.
Yeah.
And then we let them know, like, if you do this, you're gonna get you'll likely get someone to come join you.
Mhm.
From the event. And it's not just metrics. It's a human.
Yeah,
And I think seeing what that type of cooperation looks like with a kid who might find it really, and then you go, well, let me go connect you. And we're very well connected people.
It's an interesting concept, you know, a human in the loop.
Yeah.
With a kid, you know, that's really cool. Hey, do you mind if I ask one quick question? You mentioned AI a couple times, containerized AI or how AI is a very big
I'm not an
term.
AI expert. I would create a space and I would invite someone in who knows a lot more than me. And I'd say, what if?
No, I was saying you sounded like you had done that in Paris.
Oh, so I didn't. Sorry. Yes, there was an AI class and it was the Hippie and Friends thing. And so Jay Frog, Stephen Chen and his daughter Cassandra, who's a PhD student here at CU, but CU like online. And that one, it was a book she wrote with a classroom environment around it. And we can talk about that another time, but it is definitely, it's just another of the 4 programs that were offered.
Cool.
Yeah.
Good to know.
I can envision where you've got your
Say again?
stick that you went to town and you had your stick and you got your stick. And you went back to where you live.
Yes.
Which is off the grid. And I think my assignment for this weekend, there's a ham radio swap meet up in Longmont, is to
Yes.
ask people about packet radio. And it
Yes.
seems like terminal mode, you could probably get enough over packet radio to actually communicate with people over 100-meter
Yeah.
wavelength, and be kind of interesting for just a text
Mhm.
connection. Oh, I need a little bit of help, but I'm nowhere near Wi-Fi, phones,
Yeah.
anything like that. So
I think that would be a beautiful backhaul for something like a portable unit that was able to bootstrap infrastructure and just to use the ham radio to connect around the world to a universal USB port on the other side to bootstrap things.
So you two are here permanently?
Yeah, I guess
I'm working on it.
Now, we go from New Zealand, so, but I've worked with Hippie for years in New Zealand. Yeah.
Yeah.
And just kind of, yeah.
That you've been part of this project for months, years?
Yeah, 5 years.
5 years, yeah. He's got one of our shirts on. Those are a lot of eyes. Notice they're not all the same. And their designer of the shirt is right next to. Sarah and James have been part of our life and part of our community for many years. Some of our greatest supporters. Thank you so much for being you.
So what's the thing you need? What's the biggest need for this project to go forward?
While you're thinking, I'll add project to go forward, ... in education. I'm curious to know if you're talking broadly or talking about what.
well, I need to just go on to Longmont on Saturday and tell people about it.
Yeah, so I think the thing is there's stories to be told and I want to co-author them. And so rather than trying to, my end goal is this ecosystem of cooperation that starts from a website and you can be on the same page together, to booting some hardware that we're on the same page together, to booting a device that physically connects someone's physical devices to being on the same page together, to booting a phone that now has the face-to-face and you're on the same physical feed recorded, now you're on the same page together, to a service provider where the money that we spend in our communities and nations and neighborhoods goes into those programs to make sure they're produced and available to communities in a similar fashion to PBS, because we need the PBS stations of today that are based on technology and stuff run by the people in the neighborhood. That's a template for bringing up other stations. And so my goal in coming to Boulder is we have the right mix of people with really smart stuff and with alternative thinking. And we have KGNU, because a lot of my stuff comes from a different background, to bring up a model community center that you could take and bootstrap with a phone or a stick or a pipe. And
Boulder Community Network.
I don't know what it's called, but it's definitely, we're looking to create a cooperation. That's ii.coop. And so that's, if you go there, you'll see there's only one post, Boulder, Hippie's back in Boulder. But the rest of the story is ours to tell. Co-op, because it's not for chickens. Some people say coop. It's C-O-O-P. It's a co-op. And that's the unwritten pages. But the technology and how we're doing this together is we need stories to tell. And so
I feel like you have the passion. I don't quite see how people that you connect to are gonna share your passion. Like, how does that passion get communicated to them? I think I understand broadly the big idea.
Mhm.
And it's more than just technology. The technology may be needed to realize it, but it's not about the technology. It's about people doing things together. And so how do we know who we are, and sort of, that's the part I'm.
These are great questions.
I can feel the passion, but I don't know how it gets communicated to the next.
I get this question a lot, and I don't know that I've figured out the right way to answer that. I would love to have more eye-to-eye conversations to help me voice that well, and to include, because there's an audience. What was the word you used? I need a demonstration, like your words were good. I need problems to solve, and I need a community to serve, and so I need to find that niche where, like, if we were to focus on the bootstrapping tour. There are nations that the humans in that area need the tour.
Yeah.
How do we make it where they can go to a website, flash some local phone, and now it's a tour maker?
Okay.
That's a story. But I think what we need to do first is probably collect stories.
That's a good story.
Yeah, well, we need to find, because all we need to do is create space, put the story in there and a couple of storytellers, and I can help make that an executable story, because a lot of my culture comes from, our friend, the Art of Computer Programming, I went to Oxford to try to find the fellow. He moved on. But the storytelling files we use are literate programming. And when I hit all these keys to my presentation, it comes from exporting from a literate program that actually is executable and a presentation. And I want us to help co-author what the future looks like together, rather than it being in a corporation and I want to collect stories and make space for them to be real. If you ask me what I want to collect stories, make space for the people to come and spend time together from all nations, neighborhoods, and all the places, university. I came to Atlas because there's lots of labs that have PhD students work on interesting things. I think so. But where they had a link on their projects, they clicked to instantiate all of our stuff in a demo where it's working. And here's the source code, so you can disagree with me and create a PR that includes the presentation story of why this is important, and maybe notify the PhD, somebody just instantiated all of your work. You should probably respond and say, I'm so glad you're here.
GitHub version 2.0.
Yeah, it's like, it's, I think there's some more
Open source,
GitHub spaces or things like that, but I want to try to shrink it back to, this is all open source. all the way down to the hardware and literally bootstrapping hardware. What's our story? What's your story?
That's your title, that's your story.
Yeah, so the PBS was great because it had different programs. And Fred Rogers, when he wanted to keep his program in his neighborhood, he didn't have funding. It was normal for-profit broadcast station. And this community is like, we want to have more of this program, but it's not having money. They fundraised. And that created the first public program. It turned it from a normal station to a non-for-profit, a public broadcast station, and it required the creation of the corporation for public broadcasting. I'd like to take the philosophical statement that he defended everything back in 1969. I can talk more about that later. We need one for today that is I need help rewriting the philosophical statement. Especially how do where this is what it looks like to have something that drives governments to change the way they spend their money, for neighborhoods to decide, well, the government's not ready to do it on their own until there's a shared consensus. We gotta have more of this. What's that we gotta have more of yet? I don't know. But we set up the easel, we pulled out our inks, and as Bob Ross says, I invite you to get out your paints today. We're gonna paint Bob Ross. We're gonna paint happy clouds and trees today. There's no accidents, just happy mistakes, or maybe the other way around. No mistakes.
PBS is a funny example, because it did start out that way, and then it got kind of co-opted by ExxonMobil and all
I
the
know.
corporations, and then the government, and then the right wing attacks them because they're too liberal, and you're down in this sort of thing that KGNU is trying to avoid.
Absolutely.
Successfully for 40 some odd years.
I would love to hear more of that story.
Yeah.
It's worth pointing out in this story, really quickly, KGNU is a bottom-up media world, and open source, Chris, open source is an on-ramp to that bottom-up community world. And that's a fundamental piece of this picture. I don't necessarily know if the corporates would even understand what that means or looks like yet, but if you do things from the bottom up, there's a real benefit.
Oh, yeah.
And the benefit is just not obfuscation, that's not the right word, but organic growth that is conducted by individuals at the bottom of the ecosystem. That's unique.
So the kids in Cambodia,
That would be a way to look at it.
I mean, that's one of the things that makes operating within a university structure difficult, because it's not something very long. So we struggle against the structures that.
There's probably a middle ground, you get a part way up and then introduce it.
Totally.
Maturity.
it would be terribly difficult to instantiate one of these instances, either on some hardware that we have around here, because I think if you can demonstrate what's possible, you can get funding and people excited about it.
Yeah, funding is never, I shouldn't say, funding is never the first issue. It's like if you're doing, I subscribe to the belief that if you're doing the right thing, the funding will come.
Absolutely.
Might not come immediately.
Yeah. It's,
But when you demonstrate value, it can happen.
I want to thank each one of you.
Boulder's the right place.
Thank you. That's another story. Thank you so much for spending some time with me and being you. Your eyes and your ears and listening and your feedback are critical in having a voice. So I ask you to reach out to me, spend some time with me. The reason I came here was to be in this room with you, to be in this city with you, to help us bootstrap something, turn it off and turn it on in a way that you have a say and influence. So I'm Hippie.
People are here for how long? Just
So they go with Thursday. So I flew with my board and my humans and my friends.
And then we're to,
Back to New Zealand.
how long were you here?
We got
Yeah, we tried to do any work until Monday
On the
morning.
other side of the world for 2 days, and 3 of them are travel days.
I tried to tell them that the return ticket has a change fee because you can change it. That's why it's written there. So I'll cover the fee.
Get the dogs.
Yeah. Fair. Priorities.